the Christmas Who's the Puppy Daddy story from my True Heroes series, or they can get Christmas for Boggle. Who's the Puppy Daddy? What?
Go on. That's fine. We just got unexpectedly more kinky than I was anticipating at the end of this podcast.
No, it was absolutely clean. There is actually
Puppy
a litter
Daddy,
of
indeed,
puppies.
Piper.
And it's just it's the military working dogs. It's the dogs. It's the dogs. It really is the dogs. This is
actual
not
dogs. Well, hello there. I'm Gail Carriger.
And I'm Piper J. Drake.
And you're listening to 20 Minute Delay,
a podcast about travel.
Because travel never goes how you expect.
And you know what? We should redo our bingo cards for 2023 because who knows what's going to happen.
Who knows, indeed. It sure has been a chaotic end to 2022 travel-wise. Woof.
Right? So today we're going to talk about our travel hopes and plans for the near future. And maybe far future, but definitely the near future.
Yes, it's exciting. We both have a lot coming up and a lot to talk about.
We do, but first,
where have you been recently, Piper?
Well, the last bit of travel that I had prior to the end of 2022 was actually to Salt Lake City for Dragonsteel MiniCon. And it was quite the shebang. It was quite the thing. So I wanted to share it with you because we had talked about it a little bit in previous episodes about what I was planning to do when it came to getting set up for that con.
Yeah. So let's just remind everybody the con is mostly a science fiction and fantasy focused con for readers. Is that correct?
Specifically fans of Brandon Sanderson because
Brandon
Sanderson's Dragonsteel MiniCon. Yep.
And about how many attendees are we talking?
Well, 2022's, I believe there were a little over 3,000 attendees.
That's big. That's pretty big for a small sci-fi con. Yeah.
It was.
And you were going to be doing a vendor table and some panels, a presentation. What was on your plate for this event?
Correct. I knew heading into it that I was going to be on 2 different panels at least. And I was going to have a table in their exhibitor hall, is what they called it for that con.
Okay, great.
And they had taken over the convention center in Salt Lake City, which was a really cool space. From what I understand as well, Brandon had timed it to coincide with a Magic the Gathering convention that was going to be in the space for 2 days prior or 3 days prior. So Brandon was there playing Magic the Gathering over the weekend, and then his con kicked off on Monday, and it was a Monday-Tuesday con.
That sounds like a lot for an introvert, but I support his chutzpah.
I think it's all about choices, right? Especially when you're an introvert, because you either think about, hey, how long can I have this concentrated amount of extroverting I have to do? Or can I do this all at once and be free for the rest of the year?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It's like spending your energy chips in different ways, so to speak.
Or, for those who are D&D players, your spell slots, if you want to think about it
your spoons.
Yeah, whatever, spoonies if you're spoons. So it was interesting on one hand for that. The other aspect of it was that I had arrived early by a week to hang out with some really good friends of mine who were all planning to attend Dragonsteel as well, but we were all generally in the same League of Legends group. And we were all foodies. So basically the plan was to play League of Legends, maybe, but mostly just cook for each other and eat a lot.
That sounds fun. Oh, that sounds great.
Now, we kind of thought about it because this was mostly hosted by Dan Wells at Dan Wells' house. And Dan and I realized that perhaps in the future, we would want to do this whole gathering after Dragonsteel MiniCon rather than prior to, because the two of us were like dueling chefs in the kitchen and everybody just ate an exorbitant amount of food rolling into this con, which might not have been wise.
I gotta say, this is one of my pretty firm policies, which is always, when I'm traveling, always do the business thing first and the pleasure thing later.
Right. And that's why we were kind of wondering here, which way did we do it, Val?
I've gone up against a couple of authors in this before who always want to do like writing retreats or what have you before the event weekend kicks in. And I'm always like, no, after. And I understand a lot of people need to crash after, but it's just too much stress for me to attempt to do any kind of relaxing or fun thing or even a low-key work thing like a writing retreat before an event, because all I can think about is the fact that the event is coming and I get too stressy about it. So for me, it always has to be event first, everything else afterwards. Otherwise, I just don't enjoy the other stuff.
Right. And that was the thing where both Dan and I kind of wondered, would this have been better if we did it after?
So do you think you will do it again next year and try this, or maybe in a couple of years or something, speaking of our future travel plans?
Indeed. I do think that I will do Dragonsteel MiniCon if they invite me back in 2023, though the dates, I understand, are going to make it impossible for us to try out, in theory, the whole doing the week at Dan's and all of the food after, because it's literally the Monday, Tuesday. Ooh, I can't announce it. Let's just say it could be problematic. From a scheduling perspective. I don't think I can announce the dates. I apologize. I'm like, the Monday, Tuesday, blurb.
Blurb. It's okay. It's all right. Nobody heard anything.
Nope. But what ends up happening is we'll be thinking about it because I was exhausted. Dan and I were exhausted rolling into Dragonsteel.
Yeah, of course you were.
And it was long hours, right? Because another thing that I think you and I have talked about is manning a table.
It's hard. It's really hard. Yeah.
Right? Like not just showing up a panel, but manning a table rather than have a signing window of time that you're there.
That you're guesting at someone else's table.
And then
which
you walk away.
That's my favorite thing to do. That's my preference. Yeah.
Right. Like, so one of the things that was interesting about it was I had a lot of fun manning my table at Dragonsteel. The Dragonsteel MiniCon staff were fantastic about stopping by, checking in. Hey, do you need anything? They brought by box lunches. There was a green room with really good food so that you could go up.
Oh, that's great.
I was able to arrange for someone local to come help me out at my table so I wasn't tied to my table. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people who saw me at panel and listened to me at panel took the time to come down and say hi to me at the exhibitor hall. And I had a lot of great discussions from that. I met a lot of really cool people. Some people actually stood at my table and hung out with me for like an hour and a half.
It does make you findable. Having a table and being able to say, you can track me down at this location at any point in time is kind of nice, especially if part of the con is sort of social for you.
Exactly.
So I do get that. I mean, I remember that for those who don't know, which probably a lot of people don't. I used to work the Renaissance Fair as a boothie, which meant I was the manager of a booth, and it kind of operated in the same way. I actually have a jewelry merchandise deal with a vendor called Badali who do my little bumper snoot, cute, adorable necklaces and these little bladed fan necklaces, and they're great. But part of the reason I love them and part of the reason I keep re-signing the merchandising deal with them is that at Comic-Cons, they almost always have booths. And it's a little spot where I can go hang out, and it's a little place of refuge. And I did booth at the Renaissance Fair since I was like 16 years old. So like hanging out with a vendor in the vendor hall behind the scenes, like in the booth, is really, really natural to my DNA. And it's really nice to have a little like a little spot that's sort of yours in the dealer's room.
Yeah.
You know, my best friend is also at Locus Magazine, and so at events like Worldcon where Locus is there, I'm often to be found hanging out at Locus because she's there, and they always have a booth at the vendor hall. So I totally get it. It's really fun. I do think like for future planning for you and for me in terms of whether I will ever have my own table, which so far I never have, although I have been offered at various cons, teaming up with another author or two or three is more my speed. Like manning a table. Also, yeah. Because then you can take breaks. You can switch out, organize shifts.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I've seen that a couple of authors, Lucian Diver, C.L. Wilson. C.L. Wilson is a fantastic fantasy romance author. She's actually my gateway into romance. I've mentioned
and Lucian at least used to be a stablemate of mine, as in we share an agent. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, actually. And I mean, so they're both great people. And I ran into them at Dragon Con in Atlanta, Georgia the last time I had attended a Dragon Con, which has been a couple years, but they had a group of authors, like I think it was a handful of them, with a really amazing corner booth. And
Perfect.
Like the iPad station, cashier station and stuff, and they had staff so that the actual authors could rotate when they were actually there. And I think that would be, in the future, that would be a great goal.
Yeah,
I would
that's
love
like
to do that.
the consortium idea.
Yes.
Yeah, I have an event coming up next year, kind of in the works. I haven't really, I won't talk about the specifics, but it's close enough for me to drive to, and a couple of my author friends have said they might want to come with me, and so a little group of us is considering doing that. It is not a con that would normally provide a vendor table to an author guest of honor, but I was like, maybe I can persuade them to do it because it's a particular set of circumstances where I can drive, which means I can drive all of my stock down.
And that's exactly one of the other things about Dragonsteel Minicon, which we had talked about in a past episode, was like me getting a new vertical banner and also book stock. I will say this, I sold quite a lot of books at Dragonsteel Minicon, so shout out to Brandon Sanderson's audience who attend Dragonsteel Minicon, because they were there and they were there to meet other authors as well, and they were really open to being introduced to new books and things like that.
That's
and they
great.
really liked buying the physical books.
So what POS system did you have set up for this?
I used Square personally.
Okay.
And that was pretty easy to do. I had some pretty strong phone signal, so I didn't need to pay for internet, which was also a major bonus. You can't always do that in some convention centers. Yeah. Because some convention centers, you really do need to buy their internet, which can be exorbitantly expensive when you're doing your own sales.
Yeah. Can I ask if Square is a subscription service?
No. What?
No.
Wait. No. It's
so you don't pay an annual fee,
and they take a percentage of your sales.
Got
so
it.
The fees come from what you sell. If you sell, they take a fee. If you don't, nothing happens.
Okay.
I liked it a lot because it smoothly integrates. Either you go straight through Square, or it can integrate with PayPal.
Yeah.
And so it smoothly integrates that way. I got reports every night, and I used it through you can do it through your phone, which Dan Wells, who had the booth next to me, did, or you can do it through your iPad. And since I am a person of many devices, I had my iPad there so that if someone was backing me up at the booth and I was away at panel, I could still take my phone with me.
Yes.
And they used my
Makes
iPad.
Sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
And there was like the little Square device. So that was fun. And I also was able, because of the way the Square is set up, I didn't use the big register or any of their big things. I just had the little Square device that was a card reader or a chip reader. And I just put that on a little box at the front of my table so that people could only, they just needed to touch that if they had to touch anything at all. They didn't need to touch my iPad.
Yeah, we've talked about this before from a psychological perspective. People don't like to handle other people's tech. It's considered impolite, especially if there is a power imbalance in play, which when you are an author and the other person is a reader, there is a power imbalance in play. Yes. So you have to kind of think about this sort of social niceties when you're setting up booths that use your own technology to operate. So that's that's good that they could do that.
Yeah, a couple of things that the con had in play, which I enjoyed, was they had boxings, which are a type of currency that if you're a reader of Mistborn, you would know. So they had boxings that everybody, including all the exhibitors, had. Their cardboard punch-outs of them. We had a little baggie of them. And so people could go around, and for whatever thing, we could give out boxing. So my stated rule at my table is if you play a game with me, and you win, I would give you the boxing of your choice. Or if I win, I would give you a random one out of my bag. And since people were trying to collect that, one of each for a prize at one table, or people were just in general, I had kids come up to me and teach me games. I had other kids come up to me and play tic-tac-toe with me. I had adults who happened to have a D6 or a D20. So we would play a little, roll for it kind of situation. Another person had cards. Another person did magic tricks.
This is great. It's like a institutionalized scavenger hunt or something.
Well, they had more than that. It was quite layered. I did end up, because I'm me and I'm Piper, and I'm like, yes, just entertain me. And a person comes to me and goes, what would I have to do for you in order to get an entire handful of boxes?
Did you make them perform a silly song or something?
I got serenaded. Do you hear the people sing from Les Mis? in
This is
multiple
exactly
parts.
what I would do. I'm a
video.
huge fan of like hazing rituals and public humiliation. I know, but I pick drama geeks for this. Like, don't worry.
I mean, I told them, pick the musical of your choice. And these people came up and said, do you like Les Miserables? And I'm like, yes, indeed I do. And they started singing, Do You Hear the People Sing?
I love it.
3 parts. Some random other person walked by and joined them. It was fantastic. They also let me video it.
I'd like to say for the table, for future reference, that no one is allowed to do this to me. I do not sing in public. However, I am always happy to do an interpretive dance, and I have in fact done an interpretive dance
with me
for Piper,
yes.
or for a crowd of people,
for one of our
at a panel for Piper. So you can ask me to do an interpretive dance, but not a spontaneous song. Just for future reference, everybody.
I didn't do the spontaneous song. The people came to me and serenaded me, and then I handed over boxings because I was so delighted.
That is delightful. This sounds like a lot of fun. It sounds like it ended up. I know you were a little nervous about this event, but it sounds like in the end you thought it was good. Like it was successful really for you. You enjoyed it. It was tiring, but good.
Yes. Another layered part of the scavenger hunt is one of the other vendors had a scavenger hunt going on where they had little tiny hats that they gave around to different locations and hid around the con. And then they had little riddles for people to go find said hats for a prize at their booth. And my booth was on the scavenger hunt list on the day 2. And so people had to go find the dragon, the saucy dragon. Is what they had to go find. They had to go find the saucy dragon because my vertical banner said that I am a writer of saucy fiction, Piper J. Drake. Right, so the people had to go find the saucy dragon, and that was me. So they were able to find the tiny hat, and then they there was a QR code under the hat, speaking of QR codes, that added to their list of clues. So that was a fun scavenger hunt as well at the con that one of the vendors did. And it really did. I was just like, yeah, you can scan the tiny hat, and please do feel free to check out any of my books. And that worked out quite well for me, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, this sounds really cool. I've done this sort of back in my con going days. I've done this kind of thing sort of spontaneously where me and a group of friends would set up God, what was it called? Where you have the exclamation mark and then the question mark hovering above people's heads. What was that game?
Oh, like
Skims?
Well,
Sims
has that. That's a general MMO RPG situation. If somebody has a question mark above your head, you're turning in a quest to them. If they have an exclamation point, they have a quest for you.
That's what we did. We had 2 huge styrofoam, a question mark and an exclamation mark, and then we were all like bog standard D&D characters. So there was a rogue, there was a sorceress, so on and so forth. And so everybody knew you had to find this particular group for the quests. And then we had all of these things we would make people do around the con where they had to go fight one of our friends at the Buffer Wars, or they had to go ask somebody at this vendor for this particular thing. And we just recruited a bunch of our friends to do this. So it's fun that that kind of thing has been incorporated in sort of formally into a convention. That's really an intelligent kind of marketing tactic.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. So overall, Dragonsteel MiniCon, be more than happy to go back to them if they invited me. I said so to their staff. Here's hoping it happens. I think it was a really great experience, especially since most of the people there, all Brandon Sanderson fans, and Brandon definitely did a lot to make himself available to his fans in a multitude of ways. They did a recording of Intentionally Blank live there. He did a Q&A section. There was almost a Tony Stark kind of situation that happened towards the end while they were doing and there was it coincided with the release date of the special edition of The Lost Metal, which was the final book, and I think in this current arc of the Mistborn. So all of this stuff was really, I thought, well thought out.
Good.
And
well, that's great.
I was real happy with the way my booth setup worked out. I was happy with the books that I chose to sell because I listened to all of the commentary in advance, and they really are print book buyers. Also, you and I had talked about designing a new piece of swag, which was a bookmark that had a checklist of all of my books. A lot of people liked that. That was like their favorite thing.
Precious.
They took it and they were like, hooray! And I had a QR code on there that took them straight to my newsletter and also had my website on there. The only thing that they were kind of asking for is that I have QR codes for both my newsletter and my website. And I'm going to have to redesign it so I have one on the front, one on the back, so they don't accidentally like... I feel like it'd be kind of not right to have both QR codes, like one over the top of the other. They'd have to be on opposite sides. So that might be the next design iteration of that particular piece of swag.
Or you have two bookmarks, one of each. You have one, like my plan is to. This is very in the weeds, everybody, and not really germane to this podcast. But my plan is to do one that lists all of the freebies and extras and special things you get from me that you can't get anywhere else if you're on the newsletter. And on the flip side, maybe all of the books that I recommend the most, something like that. And that one will have the QR code for my newsletter. And then I have an all books checklist, which is a rainbow of book spines on one side and then the all books on the other. And that has a QR code for my website. That's kind of, that was the way I was sort of thinking about doing it.
Maybe. I will potentially consider that thought too, because I like that a lot. But anyway. So that was the favorite swag, and we've gone long, right? Like, so
we have
overall,
gone long.
The travel was wonderful. The only other thing I want to say about it is, from a checked bag standpoint, I left all of my leftover books and my vertical stand in Dan Wells's garage, rather than trying to get them home because the checked bag consideration, and also there was just, I had bought enough inventory for the next event.
Well, let's stop the "Where have you been recently" section and move on to our main topic then.
Okay, so let us move on to discussing travel hopes and plans.
Yes, and sort of tangential to that, I have a little note about the state of the industry, which I kind of feel like I just want to address really quickly in line with your checked bag situation, which is we are going into 2023 having come through some pretty epic debacles. First of all, we addressed this briefly, but there were things like the runways at Heathrow just loaded with checked bags, just missing over the holidays in particular. People and then also shortly after that, Southwest, my beloved, pretty much borked everybody's life up in a massive, massive way. If you were trying to travel at all, a conflation of events that mostly has to do with some seriously bad weather, but in Southwest's case, some incredibly poor strategic planning and back-end infrastructure so far as their personnel and computer systems are concerned, meant that Southwest just canceled flights, abandoned people everywhere. It's been sort of an insane nightmare. Now, I personally sailed through all of this fine because I don't travel at this time of year.
At the holidays.
I just don't. I just never travel during the holidays because it seems to me this kind of thing always happens. And also, I don't like traveling when people who don't normally travel are traveling. So,
for my part, I usually do at least travel for a family.
You do. And
this holiday season, I did not because of medical issues. I ended up canceling on family, for which, some of my family members may or may not have actually forgiven me for yet. But, that's a different...
That's a different
topic.
Thing. Yeah.
So either way, I didn't travel. And one of the things that we did was Matthew and I looked at each other and we're like, we're so glad we didn't travel this holiday season. Oh my God.
Yeah. This was the year to miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. So that's that. We'll put that to a side, and now let's talk about what kind of plans we have going forward for our 2023 travel. Piper, you have anything immediately coming up you want to talk about? Or
when it comes to business, I'm still not traveling to cons as often as I did pre-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, honestly, I did like 6 to 8 cons a year. I really did. And I've really dialed it back. So honestly, for 2023, I am currently only scheduled for 2 cons. A Polycon, which is in DC, and it's a large signing con. And while it isn't the same format as what we were just talking about, where you have a table that you're at all day, they have 3 signings over the course of a long weekend that are significant length signings, right? The signings are 3 to 4 hours long a piece.
Yeah, but we call them marathon signings.
Yeah, and the fact
We
that you
hate
have
them,
three
precious.
of them, yeah, the fact that you have three of them in an event weekend is rather unusual for a romance convention. Usually you have one signing afternoon and that's it. But this is like multiple signing. But that's the main focus of this particular event is the signings, right? So knowing going into it, I'm going to have to strategize around, hey, how do I keep myself properly snacked and refreshmented? And also like, hey, do I knowing my physical problems, like, do I really need to figure out how to have some type of assistant there with me to swap out or to cover my booth while I walk, or my signing table, so that I can walk away for just a moment and come back. But it is a signing table. It's not, a vendor table per se. So what matters is people are coming because they want to interact with me.
Yes.
So a Polycon is on the list, and hopefully Dragonsteel Minicon, though that is not confirmed, are the only two events that are currently on my list. Although writing retreat wise, I would like to schedule at least 4 writing retreats away from home.
Yeah,
only one's on the books right now, and that is to Hawaii for a week. And we'll talk about that another time. But
yes,
that is
we will.
On my list. And I am targeting to schedule 3 more writing retreats through the course of the year that are small, like not 20 author writing retreats, but more like a handful or just a couple of authors.
Yep. I'm with you.
So
I want to do the same thing.
Those are my goals for the year.
Yeah. So I'm the opposite of you in terms of events. I'm jumping right back in and a little nervous about it to pretty much pre-pandemic event standards, which like yours, I do 6 to 8 events a year. And by events, I mean public facing things, and they can be small conventions or big ones, teaching conferences or Comic-Cons, like the whole gambit. Mm-hmm. And I pretty much started that. So I think I have 4 or 5 already planned for the beginning of the year, and I anticipate a couple more for the second half of the year. They're just late, the organizers usually. Nothing big yet, no Comic-Cons or anything. And I would like to do at least one conference where I'm actually teaching. One of the things I rediscovered during the last couple of years is how much I really enjoy teaching, and specifically teaching newer authors or middle career authors or what have you. So I really would like to do at least one of those. And like you, I'd like to have 3 or 4 writing retreats as well. So that's what so the event thing is more like I just started saying yes to everybody who asked me, and now I'm like, wait a second, what am I doing?
Wait a minute. Actually,
how much am I doing?
You're theoretically possibly coming up to me for a weekend for a joint book signing.
Yes, yeah, that's one of the things.
We just don't have a confirmed date yet, so we can't really announce it. But
that's
an amorphous hope that we get that date nailed down.
And that's just because I love Seattle, and I particularly love Seattle reader fandom. I seem to have a lot of readers up in the Seattle area, so I always have a blast whenever I do a signing event or a speaking event at all up there. So and I need to eat. I'm already gathering a list of places that people have recommended I try.
Indeed. And then also my current release is something that actually kind of close to overlaps in terms of audience.
Exactly.
Now. So that actually makes sense for us to have a joint signing.
It does. It does. It just keeps getting moved further and further back from your actual release date because I keep adding other events. And that's also
not your fault either, because the various bookstores or booksellers that we have talked to that wanted to have us both there, it's been a little bit of a back and forth trying to confirm and nail down that date. So
yes, and if they leave it too long and don't confirm it, I tend to plan. Suddenly something will get planned,
and I do too, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I will say that my publicist for the release schedule, like the activities and promotional events that are coming up around my release, my publicist has been quite active. And I'm super excited. So there's a bunch of stuff that could happen that aren't confirmed. And so I'm not listing it. But, they've put my name up for a panel for San Diego Comic-Con. That would be lovely. I'm not confirmed, so I have no idea if I will be there. Also my name is in for an event at FanX, right? And that's another Comic-Con in Salt Lake City. So that's possibly, maybe, I don't know. right? Like, so those aren't confirmed, but I'm keeping time open for those to happen.
Honestly, with a book launch and a publicity thing, like official with trad, I always used to just keep that whole month around it just sort of vacant because they'll just start throwing things at you. And even if it's like, we need a blog post in a day and a half or whatever, it's just easier to keep the time a little freer.
Yeah, we're seeing dates hitting like as much as 2 months after my release date, and I'm okay with that.
For an industry that takes for frickin' ever to actually bring out a book, the publicity bandwagon side of it moves with sudden rapidity, which brings me back to my ever-present statement of the publishing industry always needs fiber in its diet. Things are always moving too quickly or not at all.
Yes.
And on that note, shall we switch to our gadgets?
We've got time. Although I want to mention one more thing. And the
sure.
fact that my travel plans and hopes and things are also going to have to take into consideration that I am picking back up with certain day job activities. And I have no idea at this time how that's going to impact my travel. I am not returning to the level or intensity of day jobbing that I did prior to my heart attack. But I have agreed to take on certain projects, and my discussions with the executives involved in those discussions have included them hoping that I will attend certain conferences from a day job perspective, which may involve travel. So
yeah, well, you
TBD.
can fold that. You can fold that into your writer life sometimes too. You can, now that you are straddling both, you can do what I did, especially at the beginning of my career, which is combine, nip into a bookstore and do a little signing event because you're in that city for your day job kind of thing.
Exactly. Either that or tag a writing retreat to after the business conference.
Oh, yeah. Good idea. Very good idea. Yeah.
In the area, if I have friends in the area, and say, hey, I'll stay for a little mini writing retreat for that time, which is why I'm keeping my travel schedule so open this year, because this is going to be a year of learning what the cadence is and the balance is between my writing career and my day job career, as I agree to come back to my day job career in a controlled...
Limited capacity.
Yeah, limited capacity.
Balance is a good motto word for you this year.
Limited capacity. But limited is so limiting.
Sorry, balance. Finding balance. Yeah, career balance.
I like the term ikigai. So remind me in a future episode to talk about the term ikigai. Let's do that. But let's switch over to gadgets. So what gadget would you like to talk about?
Well, this is a big, very important and exciting announcement for me. Probably not for anyone else, but I have a new suitcase.
This is a big thing.
This is a big deal, you guys. Yes. I don't change easily. I have had this. So I have always have 3 made in operation suitcases. The little suitcase, which actually has not gotten as much use, which mostly I used to use for book tours when it was one city, it just being as small and mobile as possible was the most important thing. Mm-hmm. The medium-sized suitcase, which fits into almost all overhead bins, aka the 22. And then a large, hard-sided, water-resistant, waterproof checked luggage suitcase, which is for events where I need to take a bunch of stuff. Mm-hmm. So those are my 3. That middle one, the 22, which actually used to be the 21, is my most used suitcase by a landslide over the past 5 years, I would say. Mm-hmm. I lost its previous iteration when I was in New Zealand last time I was there. And so I think I've had this one for probably about 7 or 8 years. And I'm very specific in that I don't like a spinny. I like a 2-wheeler because I like to be able to just not have to constantly keep a hand on it to keep it from constantly running away from me. The spinnies are too mobile. And also I feel like the wheels take up so much extra space that you can't then pack in. Mm-hmm. But you can't get a non-spinny suitcase anymore. They're practically impossible to find in the way that I buy suitcases. And let's be very clear, I am cheap and I buy my suitcases from like TJ Maxx or Ross or whatever. Like I'm not a Tumi person. I haven't gotten there yet.
Hey,
and that's partly because
you just said that to a Tumi person.
I know, Tumi person. I'm not there yet. I'm not ready. That's ready.
Okay. It's okay. I'm not going to make you.
When we talk about what we wear on flights in a future episode, I will talk about the things I really do spend a lot of money on. But my suitcase isn't one of them. I don't mind a soft-sided suitcase, and I don't insist that it be waterproof. So, and I really like outer pockets. So while the certain things I look for in suitcases are 2 outer pockets, one of which takes my 2-on-1 kit still, even though I have pre-check, just in case I have to bring that darn thing out into the world.
Because occasionally you don't have the opportunity to go through pre-check.
Yes. And the top one usually contains all the things I want to access as much as possible. So in my case, it's usually a raincoat or a parka or whatever, warm gloves and a hat and things like that. I get cold really easily, so I usually need extra warmth. Sometimes depending on if it's like a morning flight or something, it'll be my thermos so I can have coffee in there or whatever. Tea, whatever I can find at the airport. And then I don't like a clamshell. I like I don't know what the opposite of a clamshell is, but it has a lid, essentially, with much less stuff in one side and pretty much all your stuff in the other side. That's how I like to pack. And I like the interior to be a light color. And this is key. It's really hard to find. Suitcases are often made with dark or black interiors. And I find I can't really see my stuff like that because I tend to wear a lot of black and pack a lot of black and dark clothing.
Kind of disappears into your bag.
Yeah. So, and then I do like pockets and straps and things. Suitcases don't really have those so much anymore. And I'm actually kind of, and this is something to talk about, is I am sort of evolving my packing technology, so to speak, more and more towards kits. So we've talked about kits for like the in-flight bag under the seat in front of you or your backpack or what have you. It looks like I'm leaning towards compression kits and other kinds of kits for just generally packing now too, partly because this new suitcase has almost no pockets in it. So all of the ways I used to like put my socks and things like that, I don't have that anymore. So that's my big gadget. My big gadget is a new suitcase that I have gotten with the intent of testing it out. My old one is still in existence. It's just very close to completely falling apart. So I do have a backup if my first event, this suitcase turns out to be incredibly flawed in some way. But it looks like my first trip of the year, which, again, we will be talking about and will be to Hawaii, I'm going to be using a new suitcase. So we'll see how it goes.
Dun-da-dun.
Dun-da-dun.
All right.
What about you, Piper? What's your gadget pick?
My gadget is going to sound super familiar because it is a gadget that you use all the time. Yay! For the holiday season, I was gifted off my wish list because I maintain a wish list of things that I promise my family I won't buy, so they have an opportunity to purchase gifts for me when they so choose. The Zojirushi thermos that contains its own tea strainer. And why did I do this?
Thing. I love it so
because I love tea. I have enjoyed tea with you, and I have been more recently enjoying more loose teas as my favorite, and teas that are enjoyable through multiple steepings. And
like
because
oolongs.
of that, I wanted this Zojirushi tea strainer, and what was kind of fun was that I was gifted one off my wish list in rose gold, which is a color I enjoy. But
That's the one I have.
It is the one you have. But my favorite color in general tends to be a very deep midnight blue, which had gone, like, it's been discontinued as a color. So I didn't expect to get it. But Matthew J. Drake, being who he is, above and beyond, somehow located somebody who had gone through, I don't know, duty free in Japan before the pandemic went down or whatever, and had a bunch of them in their garage and was selling them as a third party.
I have one of those as well.
Exactly. And so now I have one in each color. I have the dark cobalt blue
So
or
funny.
midnight blue, and I have the rose gold. And I'm going to have to stick a sticker on it so that we know the difference between Gail's and mine when we're traveling together. Yes. And Gail is holding it up as we're talking at each other here. So that is my gadget, is the Zojirushi
so funny.
thermos that has a tea strainer in it, because I love the way it fits in my hand, because I want to enjoy teas. I drink a lot more tea now because I have cut back on caffeine significantly since my heart attack. Since my heart attack was caused by stress, and I have a very high blood pressure situation that's still like we're trying to figure out how to get that under control. And so there are a lot of times when I go completely without caffeine, or I'm, enjoying teas that have a far lower caffeine level than coffee. So. Tea.
Well, let's just agree here and now, at least for now, I will travel with the rose gold. You can travel
with the cobalt blue.
The blue.
That would be fine. I will try to remember that when I'm getting ready and packing.
My rose gold one is very identifiable because it is so sad and dented at this point. It is in no way good condition anymore. I mean, it still works perfectly because it's a Zojirishi, but it sure doesn't look like anything special anymore.
It looks like it's seen some days, huh?
Yes. And so those are our gadget picks. I am trying out a new 22-inch suitcase, spinny, with spinny wheels.
Spinny wheels.
Yes. And Piper?
The Zojirishi thermos with tea strainer.
With the tea infuser. It is a fantastic gadget. It's one of the great loves of my life.
Woo-hoo.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to do a new thing starting this year. We're gonna do shout-outs.
We are going to do shout-outs.
So, what is a thing that you would love to shout out in your life right now?
I just spent some time pimping up my latest newsletter. So, and it's like the 2023 starter newsletter, and it is a lot of fun. And I'm getting a little bit more brutally honest in my newsletter every time I send it out, I'm finding. Fun. So if you want insight into like my super secret snarky side and personality, join my newsletter. You can find it on my website.
Fantastic. I'm going to shout out oh gosh, I have a couple of things. I'm going to shout out, in this case, my newsletter as well, just to be coincided with yours, because Perfect. I'm revamping my newsletter to have some really fun content, in the fact that I will be adding some really cool teaser stuff for my upcoming release. My upcoming release is April 11th, and so I'm going to be adding like your exclusive sneak early first chapter reads, some look at artwork that is going to be in the book. So some really cool sneak peek stuff is going to be available in my newsletter, but I'm also adding for the first time I've set up bonus content for my newsletter subscribers. So if I have an epilogue or a short story or a fun thing that's just not in any of the books, but is in the same world, or I needed a writing exercise or whatever, I have set up links so that you can go to a page of bonus content, and my newsletter subscribers are the only ones that have access to this content. And so they can get Winter Valor, which is the Christmas Who's the Puppy Daddy story from my True Heroes series, or they can get Christmas for Boggle. Who's the Puppy Daddy? What?
Go on. That's fine. We just got unexpectedly more kinky than I was anticipating at the end of this podcast.
No, it was absolutely clean. There is actually
Puppy
a litter of
indeed,
puppies.
Piper.
And it's just it's the military working dogs. It's the dogs. It's the dogs. It really is the dogs. This is
actual dogs.
Yeah, actual dogs, not werewolves. Actual dogs. There was a dog situation. Anyway, back to it's romantic suspense. Come on. Bonus content. So I will shout out my newsletter because there will be bonus content that I've never offered before for my newsletter subscribers from here on out in this year, as well as sneak peek stuff for the books that are coming this year. So definitely newsletter. And I'll put the links in the whatever texty type things we have in the show notes.
And because this is audio, I should add that one of the bonus contents for mine is a free short story in full cast audio. So you get free audio on mine as well.
I like that.
And on that note, thank you so much to John Anealio, who loaned us the music from his song Steampunk Girl.
Thanks to Kelly of Ethernautica, who cleaned this audio.
And thank you for listening. Please consider leaving us reviews on iTunes, and we'll love you forever.
This has been Piper J. Drake.
And Gail Carriger. Travel smart.
Pack the snacks.
Now she's a steampunk.